the energy, the faith, the devotion, which we bring to this endeavor, where might our country and all who serve it, and the road from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
My father, you know, the dear old ambassador, he never misses the chance to remind me of how inextricably connected political success is with raising the money. You may recall that during the campaign of 1960, Kennedys were always being criticized for having and spending too much money. My father was very annoyed at this, so he issued the following telegram to me very publicly in all the papers. The telegram read, "Dear Jack, don't buy one more vote than you absolutely have to. I'll be damned if I'll pay for a landslide." That's Dad. I'm very grateful to all of you this evening for giving me this opportunity to relive some moments that were important to me, not only as the 35th President of the United States, moments that are important to me as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a brother. I'm especially pleased to be back here at Montgomery College, and to also see that very dear friend and long correspondent here tonight, Sister Rose Isabel, one of the first presidents of Montgomery College, and I'd like to ask all of you to join me in welcoming her. Labeled as a family decision. After all, it was no great secret that my father wanted to be the first Catholic president of the United States. But as destiny decides these things, Franklin Roosevelt decided to run for a fourth term. So the torch was passed to my older brother, Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. But young Joe was killed in the last days of World War II. So guess who gets the call? I think that the proudest moment for the Kennedy and the Fitzgerald families came on July 14, 1960, in Los Angeles, at the Democratic National Convention, when the chairman of the Wyoming delegation made, I think, it official.
Chairman, I should like to move that the vote be made unanimous for that great American, Senator Kennedy of Massachusetts, the next President of the United States. The motion is that the rules be suspended and that John F. Kennedy be nominated for President of the United States by acclamation.
We stand today on the edge of a new frontier, the frontier of the 1960s, a frontier of unknown opportunities and perils, a frontier of unfulfilled hopes and threats. Woodrow Wilson's New Freedom promised this nation a new political and economic framework. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal promised security and comfort to all those in need. But the new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises. It is a set of challenges. The new frontier sums up not what I intend to offer to the American people, but what I intend to ask of them. It speaks to their pride and not to their pocketbooks. The new frontier is here for all of our citizens who yearn to be proud of their elected officials instead of being humiliated by them. But I am here to tell you this evening that the new frontier is here whether we seek it or not. Uncharted areas of science and space, unsolved problems of peace and war, unconquered pockets of ignorance and prejudice, unanswered questions of poverty and surplus. All mankind waits for our decision. A whole new world and a whole new generation waits to see what we will do. We cannot fail their trust so long as we remember that each one of us can make the difference and that every one of us should try. So let us not fail to try. Let us go forth tonight from this great convention hall to lead our country back to greatness once again, to get this country moving once again. But to do this, I am asking you now, give me your help, give me your hand, give me your voice, and give me your vote. Thank you. In the long tradition of Democratic presidential nominees in this century, and to launch my campaign this Labor Day. It occurred to me this morning while driving over here that I have the heaviest responsibility of any other Democratic presidential nominee in this century. It occurred to me this morning that I am the only man standing between Richard M. Nixon and the White House. Now, what Mr. Nixon does not seem to understand is that President Eisenhower is not the Republican candidate this year. Mr. Nixon is. Now, you've all been to the circus. You've all seen how those elephants make their way around the ring every year by holding on to what? The tail of the elephant in front of them. Well, Mr. Nixon, that was okay in 1952, and that was okay in 1956. But this year, you are the chief elephant, and the people of this country have a right to know where you intend to lead them. The choice in this campaign, ladies and gentlemen, is not between Senator Kennedy and President Eisenhower. The choice in this campaign is between getting our country moving once again or choosing the kind of leadership of Mr. Nixon and the Republican Party, a party that's never been known to stand for progress in this entire century. Now, just to show you how very desperate my opponents are these days, they are hanging up signs outside of defense plants all across this country. And those posters read, Jack Kennedy wants your job. Well, I've got news for you. I'm not after your job, I'm after Mr. Eisenhower's job, but I need Smith Memorial Dinner. I'm very happy to see that my worthy opponent, Mr. Nixon, is here with us also. I think that you will all agree with me that Carter Spellman is probably the only man so widely respected in American politics that he could bring together for the very first time during this campaign, here at the same banquet table, two political adversaries who have long eyed each other suspiciously, two political adversaries who are increasingly apprehensive, about the outcome of the November election, and two political adversaries who have disagreed so bitterly, both publicly and privately. Now, of course, I'm referring to my worthy opponent, Vice President Nixon, and to Governor Nelson Rockefeller. Go ahead, he needs the votes. On the subject of campaigns, I had a very strange dream last night, and I ran into my opponent, Mr. Nixon, and to Lyndon Johnson in the cloakroom of the Senate yesterday, and I told them about my dream. I told them how the Lord came down from heaven, came into my bedroom last night. He put his hands on my head, and he anointed my forehead, and he said, John F. Kennedy, I anoint you President of the United States. Well, Mr. Nixon looked at me with astonishment. He said, gosh, Jack, that's very interesting because I, too, had a strange dream last night. The Lord came down from heaven into my bedroom and put his hands on my head and anointed my forehead. He said, Richard Milhouse Nixon, I appoint you President of the United States and outer space. Lyndon Johnson looked at the two of us like we were crazy, and he said, it's very strange, gentlemen, because I had a dream last night. I don't remember anointing either of you guys. One of the most inspiring notes that the Vice President struck during our last TV debate was very strong admonition against the use of foul language, obscenities and vulgarities and profanities by presidents and former presidents. Of course, you all know that Mr. Nixon was referring to a recent, very widely publicized statement by former President Truman, where President Truman said quite graphically where he thought Mr. Nixon ought to go. And I would not like the Vice President to think that I take this matter of language lightly, so I have sent the following telegram to former President Truman. It reads, Dear Mr. President, I have noted with interest your suggestion as to just exactly where Mr. Nixon ought to go. And while I understand and sympathize with your deep motivation, I think it's very important that our side try to refrain from raising the religious issue. Thank you. To be here in Houston, I'm grateful for your generous invitation to state my views before this, the Greater Houston Ministerial Association here tonight. And while I believe that there are far more important issues in this campaign, I am delighted to be here and state my views to you as well. More important than which church I attend is the spread of the communist influence, replacing our own around the world. More important than which religion I am a member of is the hungry school children I saw in West Virginia. The families in this country who are forced to give up their homes and leave their farms. In America, with too few schools and too late to the moon, into outer space. These are the issues that I think that we should be addressing in the 1960 campaign. Yet, because I am Catholic, because no Catholic has ever been elected to the presidency of the United States, the real issues of this campaign have once again been obscured. And it is necessary, apparently, for me to state here once again, not what kind of a church I believe in, but what kind of an America I believe in. I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no public official either accepts or requests instruction on policy from the Pope, from the National Council of Churches, or any other ecclesiastical source. Now, this is the kind of an America I believe in. This is the kind of an America I fought for in the South Pacific. This is the kind of an America my older brother Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. died for in World War II. Now, nobody said to us then that the Kennedys belonged to a subversive religious group which threatened the peace and the security of this country. Therefore, if this election is decided on the basis that 40 million Americans lost their chance of becoming president of the United States on the day that they were baptized, then I think that it's the whole country It will be disgraced in the eyes of Catholics and non-Catholics around the world and in our own country. And I should win this election and become your president, I promise you here this evening that I shall devote every effort of my mind and my spirit to fulfilling my oath of office. Thank you. In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the privilege of defending freedom during its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. The energy, the courage, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what together we can do for the future of mankind. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history, the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to leave the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. Thank you. When I finally get into office, the thing that really amazed me was that things were just as bad as I would say they were all during the campaign. Well, some things were even worse. After only 92 days on the job, I made the worst political mistake, maybe even the personal mistake in my life. History will record the event as the day of Day's invasion of Cuba. I remember the event as the first big kick in the ass I got from the CIA and the generals. Don't get me, misunderstand me. I take full responsibility for that. It was a disaster, and it was my decision, but I learned a few things. Learned around the White House, success has 1,000 fathers, and failure is an orphan. Now, a year and a half later, we had another crisis in Cuba. The discovery that the Soviets had installed intermediate range ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads targeted for American cities. Now, if I had listened to the same military intelligence experts then, none of us would be here tonight to talk about it. But history will, of course, record that event as the Cuban Missile Crisis. What was not too well known or publicized during that time was that the American Armed Forces sustained a single casualty. His name was Colonel Rudolph Anderson, Jr. Now, he was the young U-2 pilot that first photographed the Soviet missiles in Cuba. The circumstances of his death became a very painful reminder to me of the death of my older brother, Joe. Evelyn, where's that folder on Colonel Anderson? Well, I can't find it, Evelyn. Mrs. Lincoln, every time you put a folder on this desk, I'm supposed to know where the hell it is. Well, would you come on in here, please, and show me where it is? All right, all right. Which, this one? Thank you, Evelyn. It was right in front of me all the time. You were right. Okay. Say, Evelyn, have you got your evacuation instructions yet? No, I don't think we'll have to use it, but just in case, I want you and your husband to stay with Jack and the children, okay? Yeah. Well, I know it's early morning, and I think you ought to get home to your husband. Yeah. Now, I'm gonna put a letter on the machine here for Colonel Anderson's family. You make sure it gets typed up. Okay. Good night, Evelyn. Drive carefully. the letter to Colonel Anderson's widow and family. My dear Mrs. Anderson, it is with deepest regret that I write to you today. Change that, Evelyn, this morning. After having been informed that your husband, Colonel Anderson, was killed in action in Cuba. Can you please find the Attorney General? Yeah. No, I'll hold. Yes, is this the second most powerful man in the government? How you doing, buddy? Huh? Where are you? In your office? Yeah, me too. I thought you had a party tonight. Yes, I heard General Curtis LeMay say that the Russians would probably do absolutely nothing if we went in there, bomb those missiles and kill the technicians. I know, the Russians. Yeah. Of course LeMay said it with a straight face. Bob, you have to remember he's an Air Force general, not an elected official. Well, you know, if you think about it, Bobby, his position does have one great thing going for it. Well, listen, if we do exactly what General LeMay says, then nobody will be around in a couple of weeks to tell him he was wrong. Hey, listen, I hope you're keeping some notes on this thing. Well, I don't know, I thought maybe you could write a book about it. If it happened to me, I wrote a book that made me president. Besides, it's me proud. Yeah. Listen, well, you better get along with the pilot. No, I'm not going to be there. Yeah, tell Ethel not to push anybody into the pool. I'm sick of reading about that stuff. All right, Bobby, I'll see you at 8:30 in the morning. Bye. Bye-bye. Killed in action on Cuba. The courage with which your husband carried out his mission over the last few weeks has been of historic importance, Mr. Anderson. For those of us who remain, after young men like your husband make their sacrifice, the task is to seek some deeper meaning and understanding of their death. The Kennedy family, I'm sure, shares the sympathies that I expressed today because of the similarities of the events which took the life of my older brother Joe. Evelyn changed that, Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Like your husband, Mrs. Anderson, Joe was a pilot. Like your husband, Joe was a young man. He lost his life at the time of his youth. Like your husband, he made a sacrifice to his country. After Joe died, I started collecting poems, writings that helped me to understand the meaning of his death. I think the best one was sent by my mother from John Buchan's Pilgrim's Way. It simply says, he loved his youth. His youth has become eternal, brilliant, debonair, brave. I look forward to meeting you and the rest of the family when I make my trip to South Carolina, sign John F. Kennedy, and we'll get this up with. a man is like to bring pride to a woman. One of the other problems that was even worse than what I thought it was during the campaign was the struggle of our Negro citizens to achieve equal rights in voting, housing, public accommodation, jobs. Now things really came to a boiling point in my administration in June of 1962 when I was personally informed by Governor George Wallace of the state of Alabama that he intended to personally stand in the doorway to the University of Alabama and block the admission of two qualified young Alabama residents who just happened to be Negro. Now, in this situation, I found that I finally had to threaten Governor Wallace with an arrest warrant if he didn't get the hell out of the schoolhouse door. And let me tell you something, that if you ever have to go and arrest the governor of the state, especially if his name's George Wallace, it's a very good idea to have as your attorney general a man who had a reputation for being a ruthless son of a bitch. My little brother, Bobby. Come on in here, Bobby. Well, stop pacing around with you. You make me nervous. Sit down. Well, where the hell are we with Wallace? Really? He told you that over the phone? How many times you talked to him? You didn't threaten him or anything, did you? Well, what are we going to do? Well, Bobby, okay, suppose I federalize the Alabama National Guard. Can you guarantee me that his troops are going to obey my orders? Well, you got to think about those things, Bobby. All right. I've written up the arrest warrant, but who the hell's going to serve it? I mean, your marshals can't get through his National Guard down there. Just a second, hold on. Yes, Evelyn, what is it? Oh, it's Governor Wallace? No. Put him on line 7. I'll take it again. Yeah. Try to calm him down. All right, Bobby, this is our backs to the wall. I don't want any bloodshed like we had in Mississippi. How are we going to contain this thing? Well, the first thing is we've got to get some order down there. I mean, Wallace can't be running around inciting all those people to riot. Well, do you think I should read the arrest warrant over the phone? Hey, wait a minute. I'll tell him that you're here. He hates you. Just hang on. Good afternoon. George. You've been like this all day. George? George, you don't have to holler. George, this is the president, and that's right, George. Alabama's not that far from Washington. Hey, George, what's this I hear about you standing in the schoolhouse door to block those 2 students down there tomorrow? I know they're Negro students, George. Yes, and I also know that you're doing the television cameras down there, too. Well, George, we have to get some order down here. Yes, I have federalized the Alabama National. George, nobody is trying to invade the state of Alabama. This has nothing to do with the Civil War. Robert E. Lee, let me tell you something, George. You had a good pickle on Robert E. Lee's ass. George, I have something I'd like to read to you here. It's a warrant for your arrest. All right, at least you know it's coming now. No, I don't want you down. I want Nick Katzen back. Yeah, get Nick Katzen back to welcome you personally. And the guard is federalized, so if he doesn't move out of the schoolhouse door, Katzen back is going to have to arrest him. Is he carrying a 38? I hope the hell so. All right, you better get... Bobby, if you need any troops in the surrounding areas, yeah, well, you better have them stayed. All right. Bobby, don't screw it up. Evelyn, I'm signing that arrest warrant for Wallace, and you're going to take it over to Gatsback? All right, no, have a messenger do it. I need you right here. Come on in. Yeah, all right. Say, Evelyn, you know, we realize that this is the first time that the President of the United States has issued an arrest warrant for the governor of the state since the Civil War. Where do I sign it? Hey, that reminds me, Evelyn. I was reading about the Civil War today, and I discovered that President Lincoln had a private secretary named Kennedy. Did you know that? Oh, you knew that. Your husband Abe told you? See to it that Dick Katzenbach gets this. Oh, wait, listen. No, send a message. By the way, go find Pierre Salinger. No, yeah, go find Pierre. Tell him I'm going to preempt the broadcast. All three networks. Yeah, he's in the pool. The role of presidential advisors has always seemed to me to be the best of both worlds. Well, look at it this way. On the one hand, if an advisor gives you the wrong advice, and if you take it, well, you have to take responsibility also, all by yourself. Well, that's the way it should be. On the other hand, if an advisor gives you some good advice, as they occasionally do, if you don't follow it, which I occasionally didn't, and they come waltzing in the next morning, and they say, "I told you so." In either case, these advisors are always free to go on giving new advice. I think that no amount of political advisors or qualities of their advice can make up for the fact that the President of the United States alone has two responsibilities to the people of this country. You don't realize that as you're sitting in this chair. The first is a political responsibility. It's up to the President to provide a vision of the future of where we're going to go as a people. It's equally up to the President to provide a moral responsibility as to what is right, what is wrong for the people of this country. Now, I didn't realize the moral aspect of this until I saw George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door blocking the admission of these two students. It occurred to me that Governor Wallace was not only making a political attack upon the Constitution of the United States, he was making a moral attack upon the Constitution, as well as the rights of those two students who had every right to enter that college. So, in addition to issuing a warrant to have Governor Wallace arrested if he could get the hell out of the schoolhouse door, which he did, by the way, the television could be as an effective instrument for my information as the radio was for that of FDR's. Okay, we all set in the air? Yeah, camera 1 and 2? Yeah, right. Yeah, no, we won't use the proper camera. We'll work with the desk option, right? Okay, you want to settle down, everybody? Yeah. Evelyn, how's the hair? All right? No, we don't have time for brush. Yeah. All right, settle down, everybody. All right. Hey, Dave, do we have a countdown? Yes, we do. Okay. 5, 4, 3. Hold it, Dave. Hold the countdown. We can't do on nationwide TV. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good evening, my fellow students. This afternoon, following a series of threats, defiant statements, the presence of Alabama National Guardsmen was required on the University of Alabama to carry out the final and unequivocal order of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Alabama. That order called for the admission of 2 clearly qualified young Alabama residents who happened to be Negro. I hope that every American, regardless of where he lives, will stop and examine his conscience about this and other related incidents. This nation was founded by men of many nations and many backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal and the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. This is not a regional issue. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city north and south. And where legal remedies are not at hand, redress is sought in the streets, in demonstrations, parades, which create tensions, threaten violence, threaten lives. We are confronted primarily as a moral issue. It is as old as the scriptures and as clear as the American Constitution. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities. Whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we wish to be treated. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public. He cannot send his children to the best public schools available. He cannot vote for the public officials that best represent him. If, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which the rest of us do, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? Who among us would then be content with the counsels of patience and delay? 100 years of delay have passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves. If their heirs, their grandsons, are not fully free, they have not yet freed from social or economic oppression. And this nation, for all its hopes and all its boasts, will not be fully free until all of its citizens are free. Therefore, I am asking for your help in making it easier for us to move forward, to provide the kind of quality of leadership which we would want ourselves, to give a chance for every child to be educated to the best of his or her ability. And we have the right to expect that the Negro community will be responsible and will uphold the law. That they have the right to expect that the law will be fair and that the Constitution will be colorblind, as Justice Holland said at the turn of the century. Now, this is what we are confronted with. This is a moral issue. This threatens everything that we stand for as a people. And in meeting my responsibilities as President of the United States, I am asking for your support, the cooperation, and the prayers of all of you, my fellow citizens. Thank you, and good night. Upon reflection, I think I must admit that living in the White House has changed the children's behavior. There are some members of the press who are now even insisting that John have his own press conferences. Put a stop to that. Well, my wife, I'm talking about a letter for you. Says, we've been saving this one for a long time, as you can see. It says, Dear President John F. Kennedy, I don't know if anyone has ever thought about this or not, but what do you think about starting a museum of old clothes from past presidents? Could you please send me some of your old clothes so I can start my museum? Just make sure they're not all ripped or dirty or anything like that. Thank you for honoring the polite class of yours. It says, P.S. If you happen to run into former Presidents Truman or Eisenhower, would you ask them to send you your old clothes too? One more. It says, Hello, Mr. President Kennedy. We heard on television last night from Walter Cronkite that you can't get enough money from the men in the Congress. Why don't you do what we do when our parents don't give us enough money? We run around the house and make ugly faces. What's all the time? I think the biggest effect of living in the White House and the presidency has had on the children. In fact, little Caroline over here, she now has the largest collection of stuffed donkeys in the entire country. She doesn't even know what an elephant looks like. Jack and I intend to keep that from her. Hi, honey. You all set for bed? Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, it's Daddy's turn to read the stories tonight. That's right. How much time does Mrs. Shaw give us? Oh, really? All of these, huh? I'll just put this right there. Well, I know, dear, but, Mommy's not feeling very well. No, she's preparing. Yeah, I can't wait, too. Now, how about the... What's that, Caroline? Oh. Well, no, Caroline, it's very simple. Daddy can explain it. You see, one night, while Mommy and Daddy were asleep, God decided he was going to put a little baby right in Mommy's tummy, right? Now, how about the people's ABCs? Well, Caroline, I don't know. That's a very good question. I don't know why God only puts babies in Mommy's tummies and not in Daddy's. If I ever get to heaven, I'll be sure and ask him. Now, how about you always like... Oh, you don't want any of the stories? some people have even said that if only Richard Nixon had hired Ronald Reagan's makeup man, I'd still be junior senator from Massachusetts. We did so well with the press that we decided we were going to originate live White House press conferences in color. And so we started to, well, that reminds me, does anybody here tonight happen to know how the presidential news conferences got started in America? I was hoping nobody would know, so I could tell you. Well, you see, it was during the administration of John Quincy Adams. He was being badgered by this muckraker named Anne Newport Royale. She was a reporter. She showed up every day at the president's office and would bang on his door. She was wearing this tattered green shawl, waving a hideous green umbrella, and she demanded an interview with the president on the question of the Bank of the United States. Well, the president assiduously avoided all contact with her, and he slipped out the side door. But she, being an indefatigable member of the press, she soon learned that the president's daily routine included an early morning swim in the Potomac River, in the nude. So, armed with this information, Mrs. Royale one morning made her way down to the riverbank, and while President Adams was paddling around in the nude, Mrs. Royale ran down and sat down in the presidential clothing. Thus, in this condition, was conducted the first presidential news conference in America. Now, I have always enjoyed these little encounters with the nation's press, especially with the White House, but I thought that tonight, if we can, yes, there we are, tonight it would be much more entertaining if we could have you play the role of the White House press corps. Let's see how it goes, okay?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Before I take the first question, I would like to respond to some criticism that I received this morning from the New York Times. The Times has criticized me for having appointed my brother Robert as Attorney General of the United States, despite the fact, as the Times said this morning, and I'm quoting, despite the fact that Robert Kennedy has had no previous courtroom experience. Well, we realized this would be a problem, so we had a family meeting. I asked Mom and Dad what I should do, and I asked Jean and Eunice, even asked Teddy, now that he's a senator, got his opinion. We all came to the conclusion that it'd be a splendid idea to appoint young Robert as Attorney General of the United States to give him some practical experience before we send him out into private practice. I hope that takes care of the Times, and I think now we're ready for the first question. And, boy, I wish it was like this around the White House. Yes?
Dan McGuire, O'Meara. In fall 1961, you received an honorary law degree from the University of North Carolina. At that time, you said in part that, and I quote, "In the great concentration which we now place upon scientists and engineers, how much we still need men and women educated in the liberal tradition. Is this true now, and why?"
Well, I think it's more true now than it was when I said it. I think that the liberal arts tradition, which is the core, has been the core of the academic curriculum of our finer institutions of higher learning, both in this country and around the world. The liberal arts core has become very unpopular and fallen into some disrespect. I think that the importance of the liberal arts core is that no matter how much science and mathematics or one studies, that the application of these scientific investigations requires a solid foundation in the liberal arts, solid foundation in literature, philosophy, and theory.
How close were you and Kenny O'Donnell when it came to the Via Beach in Craig?
Well, Mr. O'Donnell, being my appointment secretary at the White House, had heavy responsibilities during that time, as did Dave Powers, my special assistant at the White House. But in Mr. O'Donnell's case, I think after about the first 5 hours, he didn't know if he was coming or going. Yes, sir, right here.
Mr. President, Ed Weisner, the Pastoral News. In 2 or 3 months, there will be a power shift in Vietnam, and the rather ineffectual men now in power, the president and his brother, will be assassinated. In engineered by the United States. Did you know of the assassinations in advance, or do you know of them, or did you just encourage the ship?
I have issued today a memorandum, National Security Action Memorandum 2365, which begins to withdraw 1,000 United States military personnel from South Vietnam. And according to this memorandum, which I have issued today, November 2nd, 1963, according to the outline of this memorandum, all American forces, all 16,000 United States combat forces, will be withdrawn totally from the Republic of South Vietnam by a date no later than January 1st of 1966. So yes, you're right, there is going to be a shift in Vietnam policy. I've decided that we are going to bring the troops home from Vietnam, and I'm basing this on the action of the recommendations of Maxwell Taylor and Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, Ambassador Lodge, who's just returned from Southeast Asia. We have come to the decision that it's their war, it's the Vietnamese's struggle, and it's their war to win or to lose, and that we cannot win it or lose it for them. We're there now as advisors. We'll stay in that role as advisors, and until such time as we realize that the Vietnamese people want to choose a certain kind of government. Having been over there myself in 1948, I can tell you that I don't see any realistic hope that the Vietnamese people want to choose the kind of government that we have in this country. But again, that's their choice. It's also their war.
Yes, way in the back. Yes.
Mr. President, if the Russians had not turned the ships back or stopped being inspected at the time of the missiles crisis in Cuba,
Yes.
would we have fired?
Yes. The preparations, which have now been declassified, indicate that the Russian ships were turned back on Monday afternoon, and we were prepared for the full-scale land, sea, and air invasion of the island of Cuba on the following Tuesday morning. The purpose of that invasion was singular. The intent would be to surgically remove by land, sea, and air forces all missile sites and all missiles from the island of Cuba. So we were prepared to actually take the military solution. But we felt that what we ought to do first was to impose a blockade, a quarantine as it was called. And we decided that even under those difficult conditions, our quarantine kept our military force very flexible. Because as you probably will remember, we first had the picket boats, including the Joseph E. Kennedy Jr., by the way, which was the first ship to intercept an oncoming Soviet vessel. We had our picket boats 800 miles out to sea to intercept the ships. Now, as Mr. Khrushchev had the opportunity to think about what we were doing, think about what he was doing, we pulled those boats back to the 500-mile limit. We actually gave them another 10 hours. And I think that was the difference that provided Mr. Khrushchev with a margin of opportunity to really consider whether or not we wanted to get involved in a full-scale military confrontation. Because there were Russian technicians manning those missile sites, and military confrontation would have meant casualties, massive casualties on both sides. Yes, way in the back. Yes, sir. Yep, you.
Mr. President, what would you predict?
Sorry.
What would you predict will happen in the next 20 years in the space program?
I'm very pleased to announce that we will be getting our big booster rockets sooner than we thought we would. As you know, our booster rocket program has been called by some of my critics disastrous. We didn't get our big booster rockets online. Soviets, of course, have theirs, and they use theirs to launch Sputnik. And I think within the next 20 years, what we anticipate to do is to certainly put a man on the moon by the beginning of the 1980s.
Yes, in the back.
Mr. President, wouldn't you agree that in your television debate with Richard Nixon, he really won the argument on substance? Do you agree with that?
Well, I did hear that the morning after that those who listened to the debates on the radio thought that Mr. Nixon had won. And those who watched the debates on television thought that I had won. And I'm certainly glad that I was born in 1917 and that we have television.
That young lady.
You said that you have more responsibility first about NASA and second, more importantly, as President of the United States. In light of such statements, I'm wondering what your response would be to the allegations that you have had extra national affairs.
Well,
has to do with the space program. Are we
Yes.
in a space race with the Soviets?
Are we in a space race with the Soviets? We are in a space race with the Soviets because the Soviet Union has, as you well know, a higher degree of development in large booster rockets. We won't be getting our large booster rockets until late 1963, 64 if we're lucky. The Soviets already have the ability to launch a payload into the atmosphere the size of a railroad freight car. Now, I think that this is a very dangerous situation for us to be in for two reasons. First of all, military applications of space hardware are quite obvious. And the prospect of the Soviets being able to put an orbiting planet, orbiting satellite around the Earth with nuclear weapons is a terrifying prospect. I think that we should definitely try to stop that if that's possible. Secondly, I think that the medical and the scientific applications of space technology to make people's lives easier, I think that by 1983, 1984, we'll be seeing regular experiments being conducted in space. And the application of these things, while it will not eliminate poverty or hunger or disease, the applications of these things will allow us to at least have a better understanding of our life here on Earth. Now, I do not like to cut these press conferences short, but I've just been informed that by Mr. Salinger that my wife intends to present me with a new baby a lot sooner than either of us had anticipated. And this is one time I can assure you I do not wish to keep the lady waiting. Thank you.
From Harvard Medical Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Patrick Bouvier Kennedy, newborn son of President and Mrs. Kennedy, died at 5:18 this morning. The cause of death was termed respiratory complications resulting from premature birth. President Kennedy was present at the time of death. He was rushed by helicopter to Otis Air Force Base on Cape Cod to be with Mrs. Kennedy, who is still hospitalized.
Honey, I didn't mean to wake you. No, please. The doctor said not to talk. Yes, just try to rest. I know, he was a beautiful baby. Just 39 hours of life. He was so tiny and wrinkled. I put the St. Christopher medal that you gave me in the little white casket. I just didn't think that you'd use mine. Oh. Yes, Mother said that she wanted to come back from Paris, but I think I convinced her prayers would be just as effective over there. Seems I'm never around when you really need me the most, am I? Where was I when John was born? Campaign plane landing someplace in Florida? Yeah. Cardinal Cushing wants to have a Mass for the Holy Angels for Patrick. White Mass. Yeah, I told him it was all right. I thought every Kennedy only needed a 50-50 chance. So I'm believing my own propaganda. Huh? Oh. They let me sit with him until they realized they couldn't do any more, and they were very good doctors. Dave Powers was there. I did a silly thing, though. I kicked him out of the room. Well, I didn't want to let him see me cry. I felt very nervous. I came out of the room, and he was just looking at me, and he said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President." That's what he said. I just wanted to hear him call me Jack, the way he used to. Now, you're the only one that calls me Jack. You used to call me Bunny, remember? The night of the election, campaign, returns were coming in, and you took my hand and you said, "Oh, Bunny, now you're president." I don't know, something snapped inside this morning. It's changed. Re-election now. I really don't care if I get re-elected now or not. Honey, the most important thing for you right now is to get your strength back behind your feet. Yes, I think that's a very good idea. I'm going to call your sister Lee in the morning. I'm going to tell her that you accept her offer to go sailing on that yacht. What's it, Christina? Yeah, with Onassis. No, I think it's a terrific idea. Well, who else is going to protect her from that old wolf if you don't go? Yeah? Honey, that reminds me. You know, the first telegram I got at the plane is from Bobby. He's always the first one there. It just says, Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. Act 3, Scene 2. Remember the lines? Yeah. Right. And when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars. For he shall make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night, pay no worship to the garish sun. Seniority rule of Congress was going to be title number 1 of the second administration if I got it. I was damn sick and tired of having my legislation bottled up in committees. Because the chairman, who simply because of his longevity, exercised more veto power than the President of the United States. Now, obviously, to attack the seniority rule of Congress, I would need as my Vice President running mate and the vote as I did. Now, late in 1963, I was leaning very heavily towards Governor Terry Sanders of South Carolina. Well, let me tell you one thing. No matter who I would have chosen as my Vice Presidential running mate in 1964, it would not have been Lyndon Baines Johnson. Lyndon, what the hell are you doing here? Well, you're not on the appointments. Well, why are you coming through that office? You're supposed to come through Kenny O'Donnell's office, just like anybody else. Well, okay. Sit down. What's on your mind? The facts of life? Lyndon, don't you think you and I are a little bit too old to start discussing the facts? Yes, as a matter of fact, I did, Lyndon. This is it right here. This is the order to withdraw 1,000 American troops from South Vietnam. I signed it this morning. Why? Lyndon, you don't seem to understand. That's the end of it. That's our policy. There's going to be no further review, consideration, or debate. That's it. It's going into effect. Disasters for losing. The big business. Listen, Lyndon, do I have to remind you that we didn't get the big business vote in 1960. We're certainly not going to get it in 1964. My father busted his ass trying to get that vote, and he still didn't get it. The oil interests? Lyndon, how many times have I heard this from you about the oil interests? I didn't make any of those deals. But tell them to go talk to Ike, that's right. Tell them to talk to Nixon tonight. Well, they took the chance that Dick Nixon would be sitting in that chair. Well, they were wrong. They have to learn that the oil interests don't make American foreign policy, Lyndon. I make American foreign policy. That's the way it's going to be. We don't have a commitment to that gang of generals that calls itself the government to sign on with it. What do you think the people of this country are going to do when they find out that it's our CIA that's supplying the transportation for their dope connection? Well, they're going to find out sooner or later. I've heard all the bitching in the morning. I've been pushed to World War III twice, and I don't intend to get pushed over by your big business deals and your oil interests. And besides, I don't know why you're worrying about it, Linda, because you're not even going to be on the ticket in 1964, and I'd advise you to think about that on your way out that door. This has, of course, recently been published, but not too many people have bothered to read it, so I thought perhaps I'd read it to you this evening. This is a National Security Action Memorandum 2365 to Robert S. McNamara, Secretary of Defense, and the President. Mr. Secretary, you are hereby directed and ordered to withdraw 1,000 United States military personnel from the Republic of South Vietnam by a date no later than January 1st, 1964. Furthermore, you are hereby directed and ordered to release and declassify this directive and all subsequent directives relating to the withdrawal of all United States military combat forces presently in the Republic of South Vietnam. The withdrawal of said combat troops is to be completed by a date no later than January 1st, 1966. Signed, John F. Kennedy, Commander-in-Chief. Now, I signed this on November 2nd, 1963, and between that time and the time I finally went to Texas, I called Secretary McNamara on 5 different occasions trying to find out why the hell this order had not yet been implemented. Now, in the last conversation I had with McNamara, he told me that perhaps I would change my mind about issuing this order when I returned from my trip to Texas. On November 25th, 1963, President Lyndon Baines Johnson quietly but firmly canceled that order, which of course brings us to Texas, specifically to my hotel suite on the morning of November 22nd, 1963. Morning, Dave. How you doing? Anything in the papers? What? Same old stuff? A wanted poster? Oh, yeah? You give me a copy? Where is it? Oh. That's not. Wanted for treason. This man is wanted for treasonous activities against the United States. Well, it's a good picture anyway, Dave. You can't complain about that. Who's the sign? Oh, yeah. Well, that's the same group that had the sign up when we came over the overpass. Remember that? Oh, it doesn't mean. Hey, by the way, did Jackie see this? Dave, you better make sure she didn't see this. If she saw this, I better call her. Hi, honey. How you doing? Yeah. You all dressed? Finished breakfast? Okay. It's about 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm fine. No, I have to go downstairs before you. What newspaper? Jackie, honey. Honey, let's not get hysterical, okay? It's just a wanted poster. When the heart of that redneck country now, when these people talk, they don't mean a thing by it. It's meaningless. Honey, look, the Secret Service does the very best job they can. If somebody wants to shoot me with a rifle from a rooftop, I can't stop it. You can't want it. Okay, that's it. Yeah. No, this is it. Houston, and then we're home. Yeah, all right. Yeah. Well, you better start getting dressed. Oh, listen, hey, by the way, that reminds me. Do you happen to know where this quote comes from? Dave and I are trying to finish that speech at the Dallas Trade Mart. After the motorcade, we go to the Trade Mart, remember? Yeah. For lunch. Right. Dave, what's that quote we're trying to fit into the Dallas Trade Mart speech? Except for Lord leave the city, the watchman wait for London Bay. Where's that from? You don't know either? The fine Catholic girl I married, Dave. Well, No, it's not important. No, I'll fit it in. Don't worry, I'll get it in this. Yeah. You better get dressed. Oh, speaking of which, make sure you're wearing those nice long white gloves of yours. Yeah. Because, sweetheart, I want you to show those cheap Texas broads how to dress. No, don't worry. Lady Bird can't wear them. Something about cowgirl wrists. I don't know. All right, well, I'll see you downstairs about 15. Okay, honey. Yeah, bye. Okay, how was your offer book on that? All right. Read me back where we are with the speech, right? Okay, stop it right there. We in this century, in this generation, are by destiny rather than by choice the watchmen of the towers of freedom. We ask, therefore, that we may exercise our strength with wisdom and restraint. Right. What? Well, who the hell is it? Oh, it's Bobby. No, okay. Yeah. Hiya, Bobby. How you doing? You're kind of early to start kicking ass up there? Got a meeting with Hoover? Old J. Edgar? Really? What about? Well, how did that get started? His what files? Pictures of Nixon? It's pretty juicy stuff. No. We're not going to have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore. He told us so himself. Look, don't you see what Hoover's up to? Every time there's a president running for re-election, he comes running around with his sex and scandal files. He starts waving them around. He's afraid, Bobby, you're going to fire him after the... That's right. Right. Bobby, I bet he's got a picture of you every time he took a leak for the last 14 years. Bobby, how many times have I got to tell you? Don't get mad. Get even. Right. You know what I'd do if I was the Attorney General, don't you? Well, next time he goes on a little fishing trip with his boyfriend, what's his name? That's the guy. Tolson. Clyde Tolson. Make sure I have a few pictures of that. Get some of your friends to write an article for Life magazine. How's this for a title? FBI's Top 5 couple. I know we're not going to... Listen, if he starts releasing any of that, that's right. That's right. Don't get mad. Get even. All right. No, I'll be back on Monday. No, I don't want you down here. There's only one Kennedy they hate down here more than me, and that's you, right? All right. No, I'll talk to you. Look, we better hurry it up, Dave. Yeah, we're running out of time. They got the cars downstairs? Okay, where am I? Wisdom and what? Restraint. Yeah, okay. Wisdom and restraint. And that we may achieve... No, before that. That must always underlie our strength. Right. That we may achieve in our time, for all time, the ancient wisdom of peace on earth and goodwill towards men. That must be our goal. Dave, that's where we put the Bible for, right at the end. Except that the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. Right. Except the Lord build the city, they labor in vain who build it. All set, powers? Well, let's get the hell out of Texas. yesterday and met with Dave Powers, and he was going over some more videotapes and audio tapes. And if you ever get to Boston, please visit the library. They'd be very happy to have you there. And it's a beautiful place to be. And I asked Dave, I said, Dave, what's the one thing that you remember out of all the things that you remember President Kennedy saying? Dave has been with President Kennedy since 1946. And he said, the one thing I remember most is when he said that you have to remember that each one of us can make a difference and that every one of us should try. Dave said that that's the one thing that Kennedy said that most influenced his own life. So I hope that that's the way it works out for you. I want to thank you for your warmth, your hospitality, and your graciousness to me here this evening. Good night.